Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Watchuma podcast. This is episode 15. My name is Serf Doesborgh and my guest is Serf Doesborgh, right? From the Zeitgeist Movement. And I did some preparations. I think most of you have seen the Zeitgeist movie. Any of the parts, there are 3 parts, right?
Yeah, 3 movies, yeah.
3 movies, and it's very overwhelming, some of them, to watch. But definitely many people get influenced by it and they started to think about how can we do the world differently on a systematic level. But let's start with your story. So how did you get in, or when did you see the first movie, or which episode you started?
I think mostly it started in 2006. That was when the second movie was released, which was called Zeitgeist Addendum. I was in high school, and I think there was this Dutch gaming channel, and they sometimes had some questions that were popping in about specific games. But there was one movie that just took over the whole internet. So they asked some of the people from the gaming show that question, like, do you do something with Zeitgeist Addendum as well? And they said, well, it's not really a game, but yeah, here's the link, just have a look. And that was on my PC anyway, so I clicked the link, and I think that's when it got started, because then I got the link to Zeitgeist Addendum. But of course I thought, let's watch the other one first, which is Zeitgeist the movie. And that's how it got started for me. I was already a little bit busy with sustainability and more conscious awareness about the society in high school, but not that much. But the journey for me started, with, like many people, with the first movie.
And in 2006 it was only a movie, or two episodes?
So in total there are 3 movies. But I have to say that those are just personal projects of the filmmaker Peter Joseph. And definitely the first one is not related to the movement. It was a personal expression of the filmmaker, who was just a little bit fed up with the system and some of that stuff, and he wanted to express that in a musical performance. And it was actually not a documentary at all at first. It was just a musical expression. And he performed some of that with some music, with some screens, and then he put it on the internet, and it just exploded. And from that there was a lot of questions that were asked about the movie, like, okay, what is this all about, and what can we do about it? And then he tried to look for answers and see what he could do, and he came up afterwards with the second movie that was a little bit more related
I remember I also have seen it first in the early or maybe I started with the first episode in the early of mid 2000s. And
I think 2001.
It was also very overwhelming for me. I was not sure if I'm allowed to see this kind of movie. I mean, it was like all about conspiracies and stuff, and it was like, geez, I have no access to this information. Is it? I mean, we already heard back then about the internet security, and they can trace it that you watched it or what you had. Oh Jesus! I'm in a position that I know something extra. Maybe it's a danger or an opportunity.
It's also this little bit of an artistic expression or the vibe from that movie that makes it a little bit like that. I can't really imagine that.
But the movement was also initiated by him, or he's a big part of the movement.
True. It officially started when that second movie came out, because then it was like, okay,
a call for action.
Because the first movie is not related to anything of that, because that just covers some of the conspiracy theories and some other theories. But the point, I think, of that movie was not really to convince people of certain conspiracy theories, but to just take more of a critical look at some of the stuff that we believe to be true. And then you can take away from that whatever you want from that. And breaking that critical thought open makes it more so that more people want to watch other solutions and see what we can do. And that was when the second movie came in. And there was indeed a call for some actions, but also the last one was a call to go to the website of the Zeitgeist Movement that he put up, and let's see what we can do and just discuss what do we all think about this and what can we do about it. And it was just a really random experience, I think, for for Peter Joseph himself as well, but also for the other people involved.
Yeah, but I also have seen that there was at some point, maybe for a couple of years, there was a kind of collaboration with the Venus Project from Jack Fresco.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was from 2008 onwards till 2011.
Yeah, from the Zeitgeist Addendum movie onwards. The second part is specifically on the Venus Project from Jacques Fresco, because that was what Peter Joseph encountered as solutions. He first looked into some guy called Buckminster Fuller, which is also a social entrepreneur and an inventor to make the world a better place. But yeah, of course, Buckminster Fuller is not around anymore, and Jacques Fresco was heavily influenced by him as well. And the Venus Project was just a really cool approach to solving some of the problems. And because people wanted to not only criticize some of the stuff, but actually wanted to do something and move forward, that's what he included as a possible solution to think about.
And from what point were you involved? From the beginning of the movement, from 2008 onwards, or maybe later?
For myself?
Yeah.
Well, involved is... Yeah, I mean, it's where to draw the line of being involved, because a lot of people see the movies and then they are a lot of times advocates, or they're sympathetic to the movement because they've seen it and they just want to learn a little bit more about all the different subjects. So that's you could call that being part of it, but there's just a differentiation between, of course, people that set up chapters, do coordination, and spread some stuff on the internet, maybe something like that. That's more the active part and the active members. But after Zeitgeist Addendum, then I got to know the movement, and I wanted to know more about this kind of stuff. And then after the third movie, which was released in 2014, if I remember correctly, then I'm saying it's 11. Sorry. Then I got more involved, and then also some chapters emerged in the Netherlands, and I got to know some of the people, and then I got a little bit more involved. And more recently, I got more active a couple of years back.
And I don't know if you have any rough estimations of how many people are involved, at least if we say that at least 1 to 5 hours a week actively doing something.
Yeah.
You have any rough estimation, maybe for the Netherlands or maybe for the global community?
Yeah, it's very hard to say, because it fluctuates a lot, because some people get really involved with all the passion that they want, and then they figure out, okay, well, to do this stuff on a consistent basis is really, really hard sometimes, because some people, they either get a new job or they go into a family, and then the passion maybe fades or goes in a different direction. For the Netherlands, I think there's just a couple of people that are really active, which could be 5 to 10 people. But mostly around the world, I think in many countries, like over 100 countries, there are chapters organized. But then again, I don't know the people that are there, because, like I just said, there's a line between people that like the movement and want to support it a little bit, and people that are really active. And I don't have specific numbers on that, because that also fluctuates. We had a lot of members, as in numbers, a little bit earlier on, but that also changed, I think, in a good way, because as we talked about earlier, the first movie was more conspiracy oriented, and I'm really glad that it was more nuanced afterwards, that it was more about sustainability, changing the system, and not about conspiracy theories anymore. And that's why we have had a significant drop in numbers, because a lot of people on the internet are like that kind of stuff, to be involved with that. But those people we all lost, which I think is a good thing, to move forward with a specific focus and actually focus on solutions instead of just conspiracy theories.
And I've seen a host of different aspects what you are investigating and addressed as problems or issues, and there were also some solutions addressed, what I'm a bit skeptical about, I already told you. But in general, maybe you can talk in the name of the Dutch chapter. Zeitgeist Movement, the Dutch Zeitgeist chapter, is focusing more on facilitating education and finding solution, or more pushing those ideas who were taken from somewhere, from the Venus Project or other ideas, and kind of strictly want to go that way.
No, it's very much more the first one. It's I think overall, it's the Zeitgeist Movement is specifically an educational movement. It wants to create awareness about the bigger aspect of society is systems approach, which basically means that we want to have a sociological perspective towards society, and taking in the bigger perspective that we see the relations between, okay, why are we here and how are we affected by all the things that happen in the economy and in our lives, and view that from a bigger perspective, and also all the way back from how did we get here. If we look a little bit back at, for example, the agricultural revolution and how are we here, and once you create awareness about why the current state of affairs is not working, and why that is the case, and of course what we can do to change that and to move towards a better form of society.
Agriculture has certainly a big role in this whole in the way how we live nowadays, but I've also seen, maybe it was your TEDx or some talk when it was like a bold, for me I think it was a bold statement that agricultural innovation was the biggest mistake what we made. But there is also many nuances. I mean, there was some at one point just the hunter-gatherers, and the other point was already like the industrialized agriculture, and there is a lot more in between. What maybe from a Western perspective we are not aware of, or for example the nomadic cultures, they were also in balance with their surroundings, but they were not hunter-gatherers anymore, but had an idea how to get the livestock around them. And they also cultivated certain exchange like trade. But most of these thinkers, they say that the biggest problem is with the financial system, which is actually the form of financial system we started around 400 years ago, they say, when the golden standard got kind of not taken that seriously anymore. And that creates all of the manipulation and the credit and the whole structural deformation of the market economy.
I think there's a lot of problems with the current monetary market system, which we also address in the movies and the literature that we have, because all money is created out of depth, and that therefore creates a lot of scarcity and a lot of competition. But to go a little bit back earlier, because the point that I wanted to make with the agricultural revolution or the Neolithic revolution is that from that point onward, a lot of dynamics shifted, because the moment you settle, then from that point onward there's a need there's scarcity that exists right away. There's not enough for everybody, and we have to harvest, and we see what there is. And then after that, then you get scarcity, you get the property, because you have to own your stuff. Then you get security with that. You get afterwards this morphs into further and further into consumption, and then afterwards what you just talked about later in is the banking system and the golden standard. So I would not say that it starts there. It's the whole market system, the basic fundamentals of that started already the moment we settled down from that agricultural revolution onwards, because that sets the premise for scarcity.
But it also sets the premise for abundance, because if you just have to hunt and you don't have any, you have no control over nature. I mean, I'm not saying that having this Monsanto-like control over nature, but as a peasant or as someone who is cultivating that land and lives on the land and lives from the land, you have more direct relation to the land. And there, I think, I went into this deeply, and we don't necessarily have to demonize agriculture on that level, because there were many balanced steps on the way how we got where we are today. I would more demonize or say or be more critical about the last 50-60 years since we got the chemicals and GMO and this kind of stuff, and this direct relation to nature through agriculture, through cultivating the land, we lost it, because those, even now today, those who are working on the land and have some produce from the land, they have the understanding what it takes, and that's kind of shifts to the other critical part about 100% automation or whatever.
Okay, but before we get there, I think I totally agree with your point, because it's I say it sets the premise for scarcity, because there's not enough around, and you get these power dynamics, and the incentive for more inequality and competition. But indeed, it also sets the premise afterwards for abundance and for more creation. And indeed, the population did grow after that. But that's also because of the technological advances that we've made from that point onwards. And that's the paradox a little bit, because the mindset is still this Malthusian Darwinistic premise that there is not enough to go around for everybody. Therefore, the idea still persists that there is inequality and that poverty is a natural thing, and that we should have that because we cannot get rid of it. And also this social Darwinistic tendency that there is inherent in human nature this competitive tension, and that this is just human nature and there's nothing we can do about it, so we can better have this capitalistic competition. But as we've seen also with agricultural developments and technological developments, the awareness that we indeed also want to create is that from this point onward we have abundance, and we can create a good living standard and with food for everybody on the planet. But we don't do that specifically because of the infrastructure that has been set up, or not has been set up because it didn't arrive, but we arrived at this point in time that it is actually insufficient with the inequality and with the money distribution, that some people have a lot of wealth and other people don't, while we in fact produce 2 times more food than we to feed the world, for example.
It's how I see this is more about it's not necessarily about the innovation and the structures, but more how we use these systems on a way that it can be more decentralized, but of course where power gets concentrated, then they want to somehow pile up and centralize these systems, if it's a food system, even if it's a money system.
But that's a natural gravitation of the structure that we are in right now. Because if you have this competitive aspect, there's not enough to go around for everybody, well then some people are going to win and some people are going to lose. And then you get this power dynamic. And most people say it's either bad morality, or some people are just bad, or you shouldn't do this, or we should put these policies in place. Some policies might work, but the structural flow is pushing against that, because we have this basis for scarcity, competition, and inequality. And that's what we want to put out there, that some of the solutions to some of these problems, you need to recognize first that it is systemic, and that it's not some flaw of human nature or some bad people, or just a lack of some policies, because the shift is a push
there
towards,
is definitely I think there is some part of human nature, but maybe these systems were designed back then on a way that human nature was considered that we're gonna kind of get into these traps by our nature. And I don't know.
The thing for the human nature aspect is that we are, if the moment you have a couple of people in one place and there's not enough to go around for everybody, then you get this dynamic. But as Darwin also showed us, is that it's survival of the fittest. That's often attributed to Darwin, right? But that was actually a quote that was used from another economist. What Darwin actually meant was the way that we can best adapt to our nature, our environment. And that is something that we often do, especially humans, with collaboration and working together. And that is why we have been, if we can say it in an arrogant way, become the the top species of this planet that we are now destroying in another way, which is not that nice. But through this collaboration we got there. So it's more, and you also see this in health statistics, for example, that if people are isolated, if you are not touched as an infant or not held, then all kinds of physiological stuff and psychological stuff doesn't happen, and you get not as a potential full human. You don't develop that well because we are just collaborative species, and we need to work together and have a sort of empathy and social people around us. And that's also what we have with some of the hunter-gatherers that were living in the tribes all together. That's most of our time, right? So, and now we are much more individualistic with the capitalist society, all in our specific houses, but then now also with our specific social media accounts, only me, and then that's another trend, and
but if you compare to the tribal society, even the tribal leaders or tribal members had their feathers or signs on their face. Now what we have is like the monkey suit or social media. It's there how we, for example, LinkedIn, that's the place where we actually collect our feathers, our tribal feathers. Oh, I have this, I have that. Now I'm more competitive. So maybe that was also a kind of way of showing. But I mean, we don't know. I still have trust in today's society. I mean, I don't think there is inherently wrong. I see a lot of good things going on, and there is some balance. We should find some kind of balance between individualism and social part, or being more social, because it's also nice to have to develop yourself to be able to serve the community.
Because I think you're totally right with that, because I find it actually really fascinating that I just described that there is this push towards individualism and also competitiveness, and that we are just constantly in this a little bit more of a stressed machine to get the jobs and get the money, and that's all a structural pressure. But still in society today we have so many people that do lots of great initiatives and work together and really go out of their way to make a lot of cool projects and to make the world a better place, even when we have this structural pressure. So that's just a pro for us. And that's where I see a lot of hope as well.
And that's the thing. Like I've seen also on the website the kind of critical overview or critical look at the money system, the religions, and the governments or something like that. And if you think about a bit, when the society is teared down to individuals instead of small families or communities, when you feel lonely, then you naturally tend to gravitate to some kind of organized institutions who are having this expression that they are big, they can serve you, they can protect you, and that's happening all over the world still.
Everybody has a sense that they want to belong somewhere, want to be part of something, and that either if it was all the way back belonging to your tribe or belonging now to your social group, everybody wants to be part of something. And I think that's what is happening now, is that people are losing this the people around them in this structure, and are therefore especially much more vulnerable to bigger groups or more radical ideas, and because they are not centered in their social groups, and they want to find some meaning somewhere else in that way.
Especially in today's modern cities, where people lose their roots, where they are coming from, and many people are just, this corporate structure, when people are having these titles as expats, they fit in their corporate culture, and they can replicate the same job or the same lifestyle almost all over the world without actually having roots. And that's, I don't know, for a short term, as a young adventurous person, it can be a nice thing to learn. But after a decade or two, when you lose your roots and you don't know actually are you there to serve the company, or who is that? Is there a community where you still belong? So it can be very strange feeling.
Yeah, in the end, I think it's a good way to eventually. Well, you can belong to your home, to your social group, but if those people, if they travel the world and they feel at home in different places, I think that's a very good thing. Because eventually you want to, of course, feel home everywhere you are, and that society is helping you and making you a better person, like the people around you. But if you then go around and see that there's lots of inequalities and that is actually not serving you, but you are serving some other person, and then this becomes distorted. So exactly to move forward, you want to have this grounded approach eventually all over the world.
And so let's get back to your own story, because the Zeitgeist Movement's message is so massive that it's just I don't know how many episodes do we need to discuss it. But what was so from 2006 onwards, did you take conscious decisions in your life through studies or whatever activities you had that you wanna kind of contribute to a positive change in the world, or what was the bigger picture in your life?
Well, the first approach was afterwards doing more research, basically getting into the internet and see what kind of studies are out there, what kind of ideas are out there. The movie really sparked for me the engagement with these kinds of topics, because I just could have not seen this movie and then I was like, okay, I'll just do my thing in high school and do my I'm also into music and go into music, but after it just really sparked something, I have to do something with this. And it really sparked an interest in more research, basically. So I looked at first into some more documentaries, but that didn't really feel as if it was neutral, or so. It was always a big bias in a lot of different documentaries. And then afterwards, motivated me to go to university to learn all kinds of different courses, because that's also the school that I went to allowed me to choose different types of topics and not go into one specific direction, which I really enjoyed. And then afterwards, becoming more critical about also the current system, but then also again about the stuff that we are doing with the Zeitgeist movement, because then you see all kinds of different viewpoints that are arising, and the moment something becomes more political, or the moment something gets more concrete, or like, okay, what are we going to do now then, and how are we going to move forward with that, then it gets more complicated. And to become better with that, the main focus was educating myself more and more, and I'm still doing that. I'm still learning a lot, and that will probably never stop.
And that's on a daily basis, basically.
Yeah. Just being informed from some of the YouTube channels, or some of or just continuing my studies. That way. Yeah. And after that, also being a little bit more conscious about sustainable practices, for example, because now I'm also more aware about there's this new thing that everybody's now more aware of with flying, that's way more polluting than any other thing that you were doing, but that's that. I still remain of the view that we still need to have a structuralist perspective to change some of the main aspects, because you can stop with some of the flying, for example, but there's still this incentive that people want to go around, or that and these companies are still pushing towards that. So it's still, flying less is a good solution, and we should put pressure on that. But additional to that, we should move away from those companies that want to make this profit and are not sustainable and that kind of stuff, because otherwise you're just doing in-system solutions which eventually are not going to work in the long run.
Yeah, it's interesting to see these systematic and structural changes, and of course the West has certain role to kind of show an example, or show but I don't know how can it be scaled up, or because in the end you want to have a consensus. You don't want to have very dictatorial change, because then there will be again another, opponent who represent different values, and if it's too hard, then is another force comes in, and then it's just violence is almost inevitable, and then we don't want that. I think that's the most important thing, is whenever we go and pursue and push towards a change, then we have to make sure that people realize, or there's a consensus that or what we do is even cool or sexy, that people like have this switch that, oh, why am I doing what I'm doing?
And that's exactly what we want to do with the Zeitgeist movement as well, because you want to create an awareness that people can are aware of some of the problems, and also in a more structural perspective, in a bigger perspective. And then the whole focus, or the basis, is a more of a scientific approach, a public health approach. Basically everything revolves about public health. Our public health is, you need to eat well and rest well, but then after that there is the environment that is surrounding us, and that, well, pollution is bad, that kind of stuff. Then you have societal and more psychological aspects, that we need to have a social environment. All these things have been studied, so you take all that together in a public health perspective, and then you say, okay, if we want to promote the most optimum public health perspective, how do we start and how do we get there? And then there's this train of thought that starts from, okay, if this is the thing that we can start with, where does it lead us? How do we get there? And then you see that, okay, then we are actually heading into something different that we are doing now, because then we know that we want to feed everybody, we know that we want to house everybody, but also have trust in society and good social dynamics, and not pollute the environment. So the public health perspective is really all encompassing with sustainability and all kinds of stuff. And then you see that all of those things are actually not happening right now. We have the climate change that is occurring. We have the individualization that we already talked about. Some people are stressed out because of work in way more areas as well. So taking that perspective, you can get this, maybe that consensus, educated consensus, and within that debate is still possible and still very much relevant. And you take that further and further, but then at the end, when we are sitting right here and what can we do right now, then, like I said, it gets more complicated, because then political action often either comes in, or because then what do we do right now? Do we implement certain policies to push this forward, or do we educate more people in different trends? We can talk about this later on, but we have, for example, 5 pillars that we want to push forward in getting to a better society, for creating more abundance and sustainability. And that's the train of thought that we want to push forward.
So considering that, for example, just see the Dutch chapter, can we also see the Dutch Zeitgeist movement as a kind of startup, which is a kind of because I know that the whole idea of Zeitgeist is changing everything, but it's like
it's like a big
nice. I have also ideas to change everything. But So maybe it would be also nice, because if it's only a couple of people, you cannot cover in depth all of these topics. I think it's just my idea. Would it be, if you could choose as a prominent member of the Dutch chapter, what area would be, because it's nice to push all 5 and whatever through, but what area would you choose? What you think is the most core element? What can, maybe the other layers can come later?
For me, I have a big interest in automation, and also with that comes the topic of a universal basic income, which I find is also currently very controversial, but I find it very interesting to see what we can do with that. But with automation, there also comes more access, of course. Open source is more the digital technology. So it's still a little bit more. You can still implement some of these other aspects into the automation aspect. But if we take, for example, the automation, then promoting a new form of work, and I'm really interested in pushing towards a more what could be called a post-work revolution, if I can use that fancy word, which is basically means that what we see, there's a trend that more automation is taking over some of the jobs, and that doesn't happen like it's not deterministic. It's not going to happen for sure. Some companies are pushing for it because of more efficiency, but then you also see, for example, in China, you see that a lot of factories are still working with a lot of people, and they are not automating because they have the wages so low that having the people is still more efficient in the monetary sense. So the moment that those wages are raised, then they instantly gonna automate, and then those people are out of work. So that those kinds of dynamics you need to be prepared for, because more technology is still gonna improve, and more automation can become more relevant. So what do you do? That's the big discussion that is happening now. Of course, if people don't have the job that they can have, do you give them an income? And how do you do that? Or should you give them a job? Yeah. But then again, we can give them jobs, but how many jobs are also relevant? That's also like, because then you get this communistic view, like, okay, we're just gonna put some person there in a supermarket and it's gonna say that you can go there, but it's not adding anything. So that's
I know.
some of the discussions there.
So it's also like it's also on an individual level, because if you see, so that with automation, I think we should be
very careful
to push it forward to a very broad extent. Because, for example, the universal basic income is a nice thing, but it's the same what you have, for example, with retirement. So people work, they reach the retirement, and many of them, or a lot of them, get sick or they die because they are not contributing anymore. So people also want to have that feeling that they do something. So people in general, if you just go to an airport or whatever and there is a delay, people go crazy if they cannot do something. So we have to, at the same time, when you automate, you have to actually design some kind of new jobs, let's say, or occupation, which is kind of pushing the people forward on a meaningful way. I personally, as I'm sitting here in Wageningen in the last 5 years, I see a lot of problems with the automation of the food system.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because the food just doesn't have soul anymore, and we are totally unrelated from the food. We don't know where is it coming from. We don't know what resource is it. It's just so difficult to trace back a whole supply chain of a food, of a certain food product. But if we would reach that level of automation, we could actually involve more people in food production, which doesn't have to be an ugly job on a dirty farm somewhere in an industrial way. But I mean, I've been participating in food-related festivals and events, and when it is participatory, then everybody has a clue what it takes to slaughter a pig, let's say. It can be also, it's just my idea, so I'm just pushing it down the throat of the Zeitgeist Movement.
That's okay. More
so
welcome.
If we have clue about food, so I think you put the healthcare in the central. I also put healthcare with food in the central of this whole discussion, because if people are involved in some level with food production from the seed, then they have a clue about biology, about nutrition, then they can have a cultural interaction with each other. So, as I said, it's educational too, it's social. And if it's enough people, because we have a surplus of people because of automation, then it can be also fun. Exactly. It's just a matter of design, I think. If you bring there a movement specialist or a fitness teacher to actually design movements or activities to do a harvest together and have fun, like it happened and it will happen again, I hope, and it still happens in some of these gardens around Wageningen. So I would actually put more focus on food, because if we have everything automated and still this almost poisonous food, then we're gonna have a lot of sick people, because what we eat is what we are. So that's why I see this very core relation between the food, healthcare, and what to do if the automation goes further.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's maybe if you say automation, then you automatically get this really sterile environment of only machines and this matrix-like thing. That's not what we're advocating at all. It's more the moment that gets you get more efficient with some of the things, which relieves more time and effort to do other things. And that can for example be again the monitoring and the people that do some of these projects for food example, and that's great stuff. But if you then what are you going to do for an income with these people, because that's also what you said, that after a job being taken away, and what are they gonna do? You don't want that. Well, everybody wants to contribute to something, and they're gonna find their way, because also for the management of your own household, you're doing a lot of work, right? You're doing the dishes, you do all kinds of stuff, and but you don't get paid for that. You want to maintain your own home, and if we extend the home to the city or to the land or to the planet eventually, then you want to maintain that aspect as well.
Yeah, but that's why we need some kind, I don't know if it should be institutionalized or what, because it's actually happening that people go to pension or retirement, or people, especially in the Western countries, have the welfare still, and they turn to alcohol because everything what you said is fine, but still they just cannot find the way how can they contribute.
So I think it's
they turn into this self-destruction.
So I think that's a very good point. You just set up some programs or not programs, that sounds so governmental as well, but to make people more aware of what there is to do and what they can do, and to initiate all kinds of projects that people can be involved with if they want to. But the moment that you get, for example, you don't have the job, for example, anymore, and you get the basic income, and you sit at home, I can imagine that, like for example, some high school students, they always say, I don't want to go to school, and then I have holiday, and then I'm not going to do anything at all, and I don't want to go to school anymore and be there. But imagine that you extend this holiday for longer and longer and longer. If you get drained with all kinds of information and stuff that you have to do, then you get lazy afterwards. You don't want to do it anymore. But if you open up, so let's give them a holiday for 2 years, then eventually there's some interest or some spark that they want to do. Nobody wants to sit at home and
it depends on the social environment.
Exactly, and that's why you want to stimulate with some of the things that you propose. I think that's a very good idea. And the best thing I think is with this approach is that you decouple work from income, which gives a lot of people the opportunity to say no to a job that is either not treating them well or that they have to do, and they also get more of a floor for food and for health and less stress. And these are all things that are really contributing again to the health, and is setting the premise for this abundance thinking, that we have enough and that we can have enough for all the people. And afterwards, if you then have if the efficiency goes on and some people want to contribute to more projects that they feel are important, like sustainability or whatever, it doesn't need to be all this kinds of stuff, then you can move towards providing these aspects in a free way, or with less money, that you make food for free, for example, or that you provide a public transport afterwards for free, that you socialize these aspects.
That would be the other aspect what you kind of missed out, or the Zeitgeist Movement missed out. And maybe it would be an idea to actually, at some point when the automation goes on, but still we would have these jobs, actually make kind of research to don't automate those jobs what actually people enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. That's true.
You can see here often self-driving buses here on campus under test, but I see most of the time the bus drivers are kind of very happy and social people, and they have this proud, and it would be better to focus with technology on those jobs what no one wants to do.
Yeah, that's definitely also the focus, the boring, monotonous jobs that nobody wants to do. But also I can also imagine for well, I'm not the representative of the bus drivers, but I can imagine that the bus driver really enjoys his job.
3 days a week.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people are in this pressure to make just enough money to make their needs met, and are therefore in jobs for 6 hours or 6 days or 5 days a week, and they have to. And then also the job that they might enjoy is not becoming so enjoyable anymore. And the moment then you have a shorter work week, then there's more job opportunities for other people, because somebody else can, for example, become a bus driver if they want to or not. But the other person also enjoys the job way more. It's a really nice example of a friend of mine who was also a train driver, and he put some solar panels on his roof, and because they saved on a holiday, they said, I'm not gonna go on holiday this time. We use the money to put some solar panels on our roof, and the savings that they made from that afterwards. I was also asking him, what are you going to do with the savings that you've done with this solar panels? Are you going to invest it in a car or are you going to go on more holidays or something like that? And he told me, like, no, I'm just going to work 1 day less in the week. And for me at that point in time, it was really mind-blowing. It's like, okay, of course, because then you have more time for the people around you, you enjoy your job more, you can do something on the side. It was really really cool thing.
Actually,
that he told me.
I was also doing, like, for 2 years I was brainstorming and also starting some projects about this labor thing. And what I see is, like, currently one of the biggest, just my opinion, problem is that some of the jobs are so people commute a lot to do not that specific jobs. So, for example, people from Wageningen go to Utrecht, and people from Arnhem come to Wageningen to do almost the same job, what actually could be replaced, and they wouldn't have to commute. And this way of employment is dates back to, I don't know, like 30, 40 years ago, when there was not that instant this data available that people can just match with the right job or what they're already doing in local. So the bureaucracy and the institutions are giving this structure. But I'm also curious about, because it's not just about the structures, but sometimes when I want to change on myself, I also realize that it's also about me, if I'm able to change or not. So how do you see the individual's role? Because we can talk about the shitty systems endlessly, but the individual is also there. The individual also makes these micro decisions every day, if they buy this pack of cigarette or buy this extra beer or buying the bigger car, which makes them pay more tax or whatever. And what is the role of the individual? Because we cannot victimize all the individuals, because they are also part of the system. So how do you see that?
Of course, you have the system, and the system influences all the people, but the system is made up of people, and they influence the system. So that's definitely a thing. But I want, however, to stress the importance that's often lost in the importance of the structure, the system that is influencing the people, because we often lose because that bigger perspective, because we are who we are, individualistic or our own person, and move throughout that. Because one thing that also this perspective has taught me is to be more empathetic towards more people. Because if we say, for example, that some person shouldn't buy a pack of cigarettes, well, the moment that you dig into the history of that person, and also the substance and how it works neurologically, then you see, I'm not saying that it's a victim and that he has no agency at all, but there's definitely a really big, again, structural pressure towards
marketing, advertising.
Exactly. So Yeah, and that's also I remember also driving with my mom one day also through the street, and she was also saying like, oh, there were some really drug addicted people next to the street, and they really looked really bad. And well, but the moment you can stigmatize those people as like, oh, they're really bad people and oh, they should go away. But the moment that you pick them out there and you see what their life story has been, then your perspective changes, because if that would happen to you, then you would be in a more similar situation as well. So that's why I want to emphasize the more structural pressures, because they're definitely more there. But again, we have agency and we should use it. And also, technology is not gonna. There's not gonna be a technological fix, because we are gonna use the technology ourselves as well. So it's the people that make the decisions. And in that way, I think again that the educational aspect is very important, because you can think that, for example, you can blindly believe in a new technology that is out there. For example, what is now happening with the blockchain. There's big fuzz about this, but a lot of people don't really know actually even what it is, and if it's even gonna solve something. But then you blindly believe in this thing that's gonna solve everything, and then because we haven't discussed enough about this, or because some people are not educated about this, then it's not gonna propose the solution that you want. So that's why I really emphasize the more educative approach and connecting more people together, start discussions, making podcasts. I think that's I think that's a very important aspect.
So, but we can conclude that you also see that the individual has a role in these systems.
Yeah, definitely, because if not, then what am I doing here, right? Then nothing. If we are all really a victim of everything, then why start even, right?
The other interesting aspect of this whole thing, when you are reaching the level that you see others suffering, or others, you know that it could be better, or it would be better to avoid certain food, certain lifestyle, whatever, then you have inherently this honest, it's coming from an honest place that you want to help.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get received most of the time.
Yeah.
Who do you are to tell me what to do?
So that's then for the individuals who want to kind of help, they have to take a totally different strategy and inspire others.
Well, the thing is with this educational approach that you have this train of thought, and you start with either the food, the public health for us, and you start from there, and then with all the things that you've learned or that you can go in your own way. It's more of the planting the seeds for some people that go in a different direction, because I see so many positive initiatives already. I mean, you have the circular economy aspects, you have the more biological aspects in agriculture. So this is really great stuff, and everybody can do something in their way. And I think it's also very necessary that not everybody's focusing on one thing, because we need to put a political pressure on some policies as well to move some aspects forward, but also move around the politics with more of a movement-like approach and to make people more aware, but also a business approach to create more relevant products or services. So you want to plant seeds everywhere and create this common idea of what we should go to, and then work that way forward.
However, I would still leave it more open.
Where should we go by involving more people and keep it more open to other solutions, because I don't know, you also don't know how many people are behind the Zeitgeist movement, and what do they how many of them have a real opinion on stuff. But for example, for me, also with the Venus project and also with the Zeitgeist movement, was the central. I had this feeling that we have to have this centralized technological solution, and we are capable of that. But
this is also the reason why, one of the reasons that we also we are not related to the Venus Project anymore, because that was an approach by Jacques Fresco, who had a specific idea of what society could be, and he had all kinds of designs and also architecture. And now it's really the promotion with the Zeitgeist Movement of the structuralist approach with the public health to create this train of thought towards more abundance.
But I still see strains of this idea in if you read through the website. I'm just
that could be.
So I'm more it's just because I think in the general idea these other movements are also kind of fitting for. Have you heard about the Earthship movement?
I really enjoy those. I saw his lecture in Amsterdam as well.
It's similar idea, but it's more decentralized solution to create healthy cells of people who actually build their house to take care of them, and then this like the on a philosophical level is the same, but it requires less control from an institution or from a movement or whatever, because people can build their own house, for example.
True. But I think that's a very good. I mean, I really like that person. Those I want to have one as well. It would be really cool. But that's another. That's a great.
I should stop you. You want to have one, because that's the other question. You want to have access to one, or want to?
That's a good one actually. Yeah, true. No, you got me there. No. Eventually, it's about the access towards one of these houses. Yeah. Because that also brings the traveling aspect that we talked earlier about. That there's some people that travel so much for a company and go everywhere. But I mean, that would be great, right? To just travel anywhere and have access to a different house, which we are getting into that a little bit as well with the Airbnb stuff, but also before that with couchsurfing. But of course, the market dynamics are distorting this Airbnb. That is also the capitalists that have those houses and now are exploiting actually these the prices for that. But the network and the technology is actually set. It's there.
Could be used for other stuff.
And if you then make it more open source and move that forward in a more access manner, it has a lot of potential. Similar to the Uber thing, which really distorts also some of the taxi drivers that were there previously and really makes the minimum wage lower for a lot of people, which is horrible. But in itself, the technology of making this access available is great.
But these initiatives, maybe they are already dominating in the last 5 or 10 years, but they are still in very early stage. So who knows what we can.
Exactly.
But I'm also into in the last couple of months the van life movement, like people convert vans.
Really cool.
So it's also a way of freedom, what I see. But I wrote up something with this access and property. Because in the end, maybe it's also a little bit philosophical, in the end, all of us have only access to stuff, because we don't take anything with us to the grave.
True, definitely true, yeah.
And if it's I'm a little bit skeptical with access versus
versus property, or
versus property, especially in the real estate part, like to have a land or a house or whatever, because what I see is more less and less people have a real property, so they are more exposed to the system, to the rich.
True.
So in that sense, this is one question, like how can we balance it out more without having a very autocratic system which says that no one has anything, because if you have that, then it's again, you cannot say that it's not a Marxist strain. And the other thing is that if it's not a communist system, but these systems of housing system or whatever is owned by someone, is it a company or is it a government or is it a local community? Who is going to own the houses, and who is going to decide who can have access to that or not? So it's very, from the moment it's centralized again, it's like very shaky area to go to have to state that to have access is better than property.
True. I get that. But for example, for example, Wikipedia is also more of an open source collaboration. Of course, it's digital, so that's definitely a different thing. Yeah. But in that regard, open source is definitely, I think, an approach that we can, because they are they have an idea, and everybody can contribute to that, and it's not, there's nobody who is actually controlling anything in that regard.
But, Wikipedia doesn't convince me about a house or a place to
exactly.
live, because we all of us have to live somewhere at some point or sleep somewhere, and from the moment it's not, because if you have a property, if you inherited something, then it's kind of granted. And the other thing is that even the rich people who have everything from the beginning, they have also trouble. We have to be also empathic towards them.
Yeah.
Because it's also a big challenge for them. Imagine when you grow up as a rich kid, you don't have challenges. You get everything for granted, and then it shifts your you don't know why people like you or girls like you because of money or not. Some people are jealous at you, it can be
exactly,
so
and there's still, even if you are super rich, then it's like you're not going to compare yourself to other people, but towards people at your level, and then there's still competition, and there's still so exactly
it's
that
like
approach.
Somewhere it's about balance, somewhere it's about find this kind of where do they have this happiness index instead of GDP?
The Gini coefficient, or what do you mean by happiness index?
In some places.
Okay. They use it for Denmark.
In Asia. No. I think it's Bhutan.
Okay.
Yeah, they measure the happiness instead of the GDP.
Okay.
So, you see people who have less and they are happier.
Yeah.
So this is another discussion.
Yeah, that's another, also the movement of the more more minimalist movements who want tiny houses, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that's another movement. But I'm saying that in general, it's all about it's also about the mental state or this leaving out this comparison with each other. Maybe it comes back to the competition mindset what we have, but somehow people just never feel good enough, even if they are rich.
I think most people, maybe also from those statistics, they just feel way better because they really are part of that community, and they are contributing their work in whatever paid or unpaid that might be. So they have a sense of purpose, they have a sense of belonging, and they are healthy because they have the good food around them and the resources for that, and the proper housing. So they have that makes that much better. So I think the happiness from that comes from there.
So what do you think is the access versus property is the most applicable for at this moment, or in the
at that moment I think the public transport thing is definitely a thing. Because that's already happening to some degree, but of course due to the competition and also with government subsidies, some of the prices are rising again. But eventually, for example, I've also been to Singapore. There they put in the metro system, and it's also very cheap to get around. So they lower the costs. If that gets more efficient, and if you have certain policies, you can get that even lower, and maybe at one point you can get it for free. But also, what we already have, and this is one thing that I find very interesting, is libraries. That's free knowledge for everybody, but you can extend libraries to tool libraries, for example, that you can just hop in to a tool library.
More like a sharing.
Like a sharing economy as well. That those kinds of initiatives are great because that's the access that I'm also a little bit talking about, because why does everybody need to own one of everything? Well, because of marketing and because of consumption. But really, you just need to use something and then go.
There are also these housing co-ops where they share a lot of tools and tasks.
I think that's great, and that doesn't mean that you cannot have anything because some stuff is just way more convenient if you have it. For example, I can imagine you with your podcast that you want to own your cameras because you need them a lot. But yeah, if you could just go to a room and pick them there and you share all of them, that's I think that's great.
The bigger question is for me, because I grown up in Hungary. It was the former Soviet Union, so there was the communal or communist part where you had this kind of shared equities or shared things, and the threat is that people don't treat it as their own. So you have a certain you have access to a certain tool, but it belongs to no one, so in the end no one really takes care of it. And that's the threat, but it's also true. Again the balance and
that's the belonging of the community, also the education of it.
How big is the community? All of
and if you reside in that sort of community, but outside of that, still the competition is there, and the working that is there, and you're not taken care of by the community or the government in that regard. Then of course you're gonna be much more violent towards the stuff that you get, and it doesn't matter too much because you're not taking care of me anyway. But that's also the approach that we want to take, that the people are they want to contribute for themselves, that self-interest actually becomes social interest. Because if you really think about it, everything that you do in society eventually comes back to you. So therefore you have to, if anything that you contribute comes back to you, so you better make it social interest, with the realization that the earth is one whole and the people are all together with this public health perspective.
I also see it back to the just a little bit of touch with the labor and with treating communal assets or items, that mainly because of the labor I discovered this mentality very harshly, this outsourcing mentality. There will be someone who will clean this, because I'm better. But I really like, for example, the idea in Japan that the school people, the students are cleaning the school together. So they have it's the same like with food. It's not outsourced to someone who has just the ability to grow that food, and they are in that kind of label that you are only able to do that, so do it. But being involved, it's another story. And I don't know, have you experienced something about this outsourcing mentality? Because I always see it like even in a toilet, like someone goes there and don't care about if anyone will follow or if anyone should clean it. So it's also like what we use with the planet, like leave it at least as good as we found it, or even better. So, but I think this could be kind of the driving notion behind most of the things what we do.
I think from my own experience, as a side job for my university, I did a lot of bartending and worked as a waiter. And you really notice the difference right away, that some people have a different mentality. But some people, they come in and they order some stuff and you give it to them and say thank you, and sometimes they bring it even back. It's like, that's my job, I'll do it myself. But other people, they come in and they have the mentality, okay, well, I worked my job now for 6 hours today, and now I got my money and I'm gonna spend it, and you better treat me right because I'm paying. That's a whole different thing, and that's also when the moment that there is some money that is involved, then you feel privileged that you can spend it and be treated way better. And
treat people or express your maybe your shitty day to give it to another.
Exactly.
My boss treated me not so good today, so now I have to be an asshole.
Exactly. And I think that's the moment also some companies get bigger and bigger. I've just talked with a friend of mine as well, that there's a boss of his that just he could expand his company, but he doesn't want to, because then you lose this vibe of the people that are working together and everybody knows each other. because the moment the company gets bigger, then then you have a cleaner, and then you have somebody that's doing the office job, and then there's the director, and then you get these power dynamics, and so, and that is the individualization that we talked about in the beginning.
But still, if it's those people who work and do these kind of jobs, they can be also treated well. So this is kind of in between way.
Yeah.
If there is a job like that, like, still treat those people well.
True, but for example, if you give them a universal basic income, or give them a basic income, then that's interesting experience for me also. What happens if you give some of the cleaners a basic income? Are they gonna quit their job, or are they not? I can imagine that in some companies where they really feel that they're part of something, and they can also do some other stuff, or they really enjoy what they're doing, or they're not doing it all time a day, that they really want to help out. And I've also saw some janitors that really are part of the whole school. For example, for the school that I worked at, they fix everything. They're really essential. The cleaners, therefore, are also really essential. So then they're part of that, and then you give them a basic income and see what happens. Are they gonna quit, or are they gonna move somewhere else? Because now there's a lot of power, right? From the boss to the cleaner. If you don't do it well, or you cannot go away because you need the money, right?
It depends on the company.
And exactly, it depends on the company. So and there's also a funny experiment that was done, I think. There was a comparison between people that stopped working. There was one group of people, some bankers that stopped working, and I think I need to check the facts for that, but I think it was in London. But they stopped for a while because they wanted to have an increase in money, and there was not that much of a dysregulation of society at that point. But if you compared it to another part in time where some of the garbage men who were stopped, the town was in chaos between a couple of days. And so there you also see the efficacy or the relevance of some jobs or not. And that's also what we then can focus on, because the moment that you give people a basic income, they can say, is this relevant? Do I like this? Do I like the people around that? Okay, I can make an impact. Well, if not, then I'm going to do something different, or I now have the freedom and the opportunity to do so.
Cool. What do you think? What is the biggest challenge for now for the Zeitgeist movement?
I think the biggest challenge is to get more active people, and I think that's also why I want to work a little bit more on that, and it's not per se because of the movement itself, but also because a lot of people get drawn back into their daily lives, and that they have to work at their job. And I also noticed that for myself, that I was at uni, and then I want to do a lot of stuff for the movement and create awareness and do more sustainable practices. But wait, okay, I have to do these exams and these things. And some people that are working 9 to 5, some volunteers that I work with as well in the Zeitgeist movement, they say, well, I can only contribute one hour a week, not more. So I think that's a balance that we should strive for, and get a better infrastructure, that we have more people that can collaborate on the same stuff while actually also maintaining their own lives, because I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah. How I see is that, for example, the movie itself did its job back then, but nowadays there are a lot of other, maybe they are not called Zeitgeist movement, but as you see in business, you can see the results with platform-based business models, and many other initiatives. I don't know, are you planning to cooperate with other initiatives too?
Yeah, well, we're open. Eventually it's going to be an all-encompassing thing. It's just a train of thought that we want to collaborate with all kinds of people that want to move this forward. So in that sense, it's really open, and and eventually the focus will not be more of a business-like approach. It will still be a social movement approach of getting more people involved. But then they are, of course, in their own lives and doing all kinds of stuff, and that influences the companies, the politics, and all kinds of stuff further.
So the main, if we would put it in a nutshell, the main mission of Zeitgeist movement is not necessary to accomplish all of those ideas which are already there, but kind of create awareness and raise a kind of individual and collective consciousness towards certain aspects of our life.
Exactly,
like
it's move towards better, more automation in a more humane sense that we just described. Move towards more access, more open source. That we have more connected, which is now also the hype of Internet of Things. But what we really mean is that if you really take a global approach, then you need to look at the resources that we have and how can we distribute them.
But how about the local? Because I see much more.
And the last one is the localization. That's exactly it. So the last one is that we need to localize and decentralize more and more, and not have things, because if we can create all of the essentials in your own neighborhood, why not? Because why ship a tomato from China to America? I mean, that's just pure nonsense.
And what is your next big challenge?
My next big challenge is, I think sorting out, because I'm also now involved with some of the emails that all come in, and setting up the new infrastructure, because we're now working on the infrastructure of the global movement, and to make a better, to coordinate that better, so that everybody that actually wants to get active, because we get a lot of emails in the inbox that people say, I want to become active, I want to be more involved, I want to learn more, to give them a good infrastructure, a good platform to connect to people, and to actually create this awareness further, and do that in different countries, so that the chapters, every chapter in different countries can do that in a better way.
What would be your ideal job, as a last question?
If we can still use this word of job.
Well, I'm checking for some of the jobs right now as well, which is a lot of research, also with technology and and seeing what works and doesn't work. I think it's still research and then creating awareness. And then still talking to people, organize events. That's stuff that I really like, and I think there's already some jobs out there. So I'm hoping to get one of them.
Yeah. So you are not 100% against jobs.
Well, I need to. I'm in the system right now as well, so I need to get some money. Unfortunately, But from that we can move forward, right?
So it's all about the balance and finding some kind of gradual way of. Consensus.
And eventually just moving forward from that point onward with a good frame of mind towards something that we actually want.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was great to get more clarification regarding to what is under the hood of the Zeitgeist local chapter, let's say, the Dutch chapter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Great stuff.
And I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you. You too.
Let's say hi to the people.
Bye bye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.